Hello everyone, welcome back to another mini tutorial session. My name is Leo, and for this video, I'm going to teach you my top 5 best Procreate tips for beginners who are just starting to use this amazing application. So without any further ado, let's get to it. So tip number 1 is whenever you're starting on Procreate, that is the first screen that you see. It's your canvas section. And whenever you're creating a new canvas, I would suggest for you, if you're just starting on Procreate, start with the screen size. And here on the screen size, you can have some fun. You can start using your brushes and checking all of the different brushes that Procreate actually offers you from the get-go. But once you're actually more comfortable with the, just starting to paint here on Procreate, you could go back here to Gallery and you could actually think, what is the canvas size that you actually want? That is depending to the illustration that you want to create. For example, on the canvas section here, the first option that we just looked was the screen size. You also have the clipboard, but then here at the bottom, these are the other sizes or custom size canvas that you can create. I have, for example, a vertical size canvas if I want to create something that looks like a poster, such as this one. And I also have some other sizes. I have my Instagram size, which is a high resolution square of 2048 by 2048 pixels. I have my Dribble custom settings, which Dribble actually works with 800 by 600 pixels. So I've created a little bit of a higher resolution of that ratio. I have my 4K, and there are some other sizes here as well. So it's important for you to actually plan a little bit ahead, depending on what illustration you're trying to create. But if you can't find whatever you're trying to create here in the pre-made custom settings, you can create your own by just clicking on this button, create custom size. And now you can just type that into pixels, and you can change here on the left. You can create something by with using inches, centimeters, or millimeters. So if you're actually using something or trying to create something that will go for print, I will highly suggest that you use inches. And pixels if this is just digital artwork that will live on the computer. So for example, for inches, let's just do a 12 by 18, which is a really standard kind of size printing. And we're going to set the DPI to 300 because that is actually quite good in terms of printing. You definitely want to keep to at least 300. And now we can give it a name. So let's just say Ghost Paper Poster Art. And now clicking on Done, Procreate already creates that canvas for you with that selected aspect ratio. And now if I click here on Gallery, click on the plus, and scroll all the way to the bottom of my list, here it is Ghost Paper Poster Art, already set up as a canvas of 12 by 18 inches. And I can also click and hold and drag this all the way to the top. And that is if this, for example, is my most created canvas. If I'm always creating canvas, for example, that are 12 by 18, then I can leave this at the top and have a quick access to it. And finally, one last thing, once you create your canvas, Procreate always generates a canvas with a white background. So another trick that you can do is just clicking on layers. Procreate also always generates a new layer for you, and you have this background color here at the bottom, which you can just click on the little thumbnail and you can change your background color to any color at the start. And I would highly recommend you to start with a medium gray, and that is because of colors. For example, take a look at these colors that I've set up onto my new layer 1. Now, keep looking at these colors. As I drag my background color all the way to the white, all of a sudden these colors are popping a little bit less than they were on the gray value background. And the same can be said if we actually go all the way to the black background, all of a sudden these colors are popping more. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that the background is actually playing a role in your colors. So if you actually want to grade your colors the best way as possible from the beginning, you do want to start with a medium gray so that your background doesn't affect your color decisions. So now tip number 2 is that now that we have our canvas ready and we have our background color also ready here, we want to work with some reference, and we want to have that reference set to the side. So that is actually an Apple OS tip right here. You see this little line that we have at the bottom of Procreate? That is actually a line that's from the Apple OS. and we can slide that line up just gently, and we can click on the sapphire icon and just drag it to the right. Now you can open any links here and any references that you may need to and actually start your drawing. You can also click and hold on the picture and drag it onto Procreate. And Procreate will already import the picture for you into your canvas into a new layer. All right, tip number 3 is for you to use layers. Layers are something definitely helpful in Procreate whenever you are creating your illustration. And try not to create everything into one layer. And that is because it will actually constrict your work. And you can always merge layers down the road by just using the pinch gesture. Just select whatever layer you want from the top and whatever layer at the bottom you actually want to pinch. For example, let's just say we want to merge sun, woman, and the mountains layer. And we can just pinch those 3 layers. And now if I use my move tool on this layer here, I'm now moving all 3 layers. So I'm just going to undo that selection. And once again, try to use multiple layers. Another reason for that I'm just going to show you. For example, say that you're creating something that some shapes and you're using the quick color drag to actually fill these shapes. And I'm going to use another color and I'm going to make another circle right here. And this time I want to fill this green circle. Because we're working all in one layer, Procreate is not able to actually fill the circle that we want, which is to put the green on top of the pink completely. And you could go here and can use your brush, but that's going to require a tedious amount of work to just go and paint all of these areas. It will be much easier for you to create a new layer and then right here, just create your circle and keep working with layers to then down the road again, if you do want to merge layers, you can also do that as well. Another thing that I find very, very helpful is to save your brushes and save your colors. You can save your colors in 2 ways. One way that I go about it, it's a very simple way, is just to have a new layer here at the very top. In this layer, you're just going to create, I'm just going to reduce this brush size, you're just going to create some small circles and quickly fill them with the colors that you actually want. And that is your little color palette that you're just saving here at the very top. Another way that you can go about it is just clicking on the colors menu. You can then select this color and just make sure that it's selected here at the top right, and you can just click here on your color palette. And that will actually add that swatch onto your color palette. And in order for you to create more color palettes, you just have to click on the plus icon and that becomes your default color palette. You can click on the name and call it any name that you want. And now this color palette is right here at the bottom of any of your menus of color selection. So once again, if I wanted this green color onto this color palette 1, I can just click on the little square. And if I grab any other color values, I can go back into my color menu here and click on the little square, and I'm saving all of these swatches. And that will become way more helpful for me down the road if I'm actually going back to these colors, if I have them either saved as a color palette or at the very top as a layer. Secondly, I always also save the brushes that I'm using as my selected brushes. And I've basically worked with 3 brushes. The first one is just a very technical pencil, and that is, as you can see, mostly for sketching. Second brush that I use is the Studio Pen, and in this brush I actually just have it to draw my solid lines, and I have my Studio Pen set up with no pressure controls so that I always have a clean line without tapering. Lastly, I have some simple shading brush that I just use to add any shading that I want whenever I think this shading technique is what I want to do for my drawing. Sometimes I actually want to have a solid line shading with some opacity, or any other kind of shading that is not the this brush, which is the noise brush. So for you, I highly recommend that you do not start messing with the default brushes. Instead, I recommend you, if you like a certain brush, for you to make a duplicate of that brush and save it into your selected brushes. So how do we do that? For example, let's just say that we actually really like the marker brush. So I can just slide this to the right and click duplicate. And now I have my marker 1 brush. And now I can just click and hold and drag it to my main brushes right here. And also, if I want to create a new brush set, you just have to gently slide this down, the brush library list, and you can click on the plus. The plus is a little hidden there. And now let's just say we can call it set 1. And once again, I can click on my marker brush and just move it to set 1. And now I've made a duplicate of that brush, which I can then click here and I can mask with any of the properties, and I'm not going to be messing with the default brush that Procreate has for us from the beginning. Now, tip number 4 is gesture controls. And gesture controls are super powerful here on Procreate. I'm going to show you the gesture controls that I use, and then I'm going to show you how to activate them. So the very first one, I'm just going to create a new layer here. Make sure I'm just drawing something on top. So a 2-finger tap creates an undo action. A 3-finger tap creates a redo action. A 3-finger swipe brings on the menu where you can copy and paste the contents of that layer onto a new layer. And you can also do a 3-finger swipe and use the cut and paste option, which then cuts the whole contents of that layer and pastes onto a new layer. You can also use the selection tool and perform the same actions. If I do the cut and paste, now I've split that element into 2 layers. I also have tap and hold to bring my quick menu, and on my quick menu I have my painting tool, erase, merge down, eyedropper, flip a picture horizontally, and also creating a new layer. And I can also quickly choose, for example, if I just tap and hold and go new layer, tap and hold paint, tap and hold erase. So this really speeds up my process whenever I'm creating my illustrations. Now there's also a way to customize these actions by just clicking and holding onto any of the 6 options that we have right here. And then you have a selection list where you can set your new desired option to be the one, for example, replacing the new layer right here. And also just remember, I'm showing how to activate all of these options at the end of this tip number 4. The next gesture is, say, create a quick line, and I'm just going to click on edit shape. I'm going to edit this line to something like this. And once I edit this line that had the power of just messing with the vertex and be able to reposition the line as almost like a vector line, that line now becomes pixel. And as it is now pixel art, I don't have the ability to change that line anymore. However, if I click on the little square here between the brush size and my brush opacity, I do have the option of edit shape, and I get a second redo where I can reposition my line once again. And even if I click away and once again hit the little square, I can go back again and again until I make a new quick shape line or just a quick shape in general. So this only works with your last generated quick shape. So now if I click edit shape again, I only have the ability to tweak my ellipse. I won't be able to tweak my line anymore. However, by default, this option here that I just showed you is not even set on Procreate, so you don't even get to have a chance of a redo option. So now follow me on how to access these options. First, we're going to click on the little gear icon right here, and we're going to head into gesture controls. And starting with quick shape, you're going to have the little square between the brush size and the brush opacity turned on. Also for the draw and hold, I have my timer, which means that whenever I create an abstract line, the time that it takes for it to become a quick shape tool is about 1/3 of a second. I've set up to somewhere around 0.34 of a second. Quick menu, I've set up my touch and hold to about 0.15 of a second. Because again, I want to make this a very quick access menu and increase my productivity. Full screen, make sure the 4-finger tap is turned on. Clear layer, make sure that the scrub is set to on. Copy and paste, make sure that 3-finger swipe is checked on right here. And finally, layer select, which is something that I haven't showed you just yet. is a touch will invoke layer select. And this one is a really powerful one. Basically, with just one finger around the canvas, you can just drag it around and you can find whatever layers are, for example, in this very section here, whatever layers are contained in this section. And right here we have two layers. One is just an overall color correction, and the second one is our layer of our character. So once again, I can just scrub the illustration. For example, I just found that this section here contains the sun as a layer. We have the background, and we have the midground, and finally the background. So for example, if I just click on sun, now if I go back to my layers panel, I'm already selected and within this layer of the sun. So I could continue to actually tweak this layer without even having to click on our layers panel. It's a really powerful tool that allows us to quickly access any layer in our canvas. Now for tip number 5, I highly recommend that you use grid whenever you're creating your illustrations, whether they are realistic illustrations or stylized illustrations, such as the ones that I create here on this channel. Make sure to hit the gear icon right here and go into Canvas and set your drawing guide checkbox to on. And that's going to give you a squared grid. I'm just going to click Edit Drawing Guide because I believe for this video, I really have to set the thickness and opacity to maximum so you can see the grid as best. I'm just going to click Done here. And now you can see that I have my grid turned on. I do like to work with a medium-sized grid because it allows me to have a better sense on the proportion of the elements that I create. And as you can see, by using a grid, I was able to center this illustration as best as possible. I was also able to use rule of thirds whenever I'm trying to create, for example, the height of the sun compared to the rest of the painting. And I do highly recommend you to use grids to situate yourself around your illustration. Finally, I also recommend you to take a look on the Edit Drawing Guide, take a look at the Symmetry tab, as well as the Perspective tab. Those are two very, very powerful tools. The perspective, of course, if you do want to create something that has perspective in your drawings. And finally, Symmetry, if you are creating something that you can just create one side of the illustration so that it mirrors to the other side. So that about covers for my top 5 tips on how to start Procreate for beginners. If you did find this video useful and helpful, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below if you have any other questions on Procreate, and I will try my best to answer every single question that you may have. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Ciao.